She sleeps on concrete, he talks to shadows, and they both call a sidewalk home. This isn't fiction, this isn't a failed country. This is Vancouver, Canada, where the rent is higher than hope. And the only thing more common than tents is silence. Mental health, addiction, eviction, it's all here. But no one's looking, until now. Welcome to Globe Path Travel Documentary, where we explore the stories most travel guides leave out. Today, we take you deep into Vancouver, not for its scenic beauty or luxury lifestyle, but for the growing crisis hidden in plain sight. Beneath the skyline of glass towers and oceanfront condos, thousands struggle to survive without shelter, support, or safety. Addiction, mental illness, and systemic neglect have turned sidewalks into bedrooms and alleys into battlegrounds. This isn't just a city, it's a warning. A place where wealth and suffering coexist, and where silence has become more dangerous than chaos. Through raw footage, real voices, and unfiltered truth, we'll walk into the heart of Vancouver's urban divide. If you believe these stories deserve to be seen, heard, and acted upon, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Your engagement helps us bring light to the darkest corners. Tent cities, sidewalks turned shelters. In 2025, Vancouver's sidewalks have become homes, not by choice but by sheer necessity. Across East Hastings, public parks, and narrow alleyways, rows of tents stretch like scars across the city's surface. These aren't temporary shelters for a rainy night. For thousands, they've become permanent addresses, stitched together with tarps, shopping carts, and whatever scraps offer a hint of protection. Inside these makeshift homes, people live exposed to the elements, without clean water, without safety, and without the basic dignity of privacy. Every few weeks, city crews arrive to dismantle the camps, citing sanitation and public order. But within days, the tents return, rebuilt in the same spots, by the same hands, because there's nowhere else to go. This isn't just a housing crisis, it's a humanitarian breakdown unfolding in real time in one of North America's wealthiest cities. If you have thoughts, questions, or personal experiences related to this issue, we invite you to share them in the comments below. Your voice matters, and it might be the one that helps others understand what's really happening. Root causes. Economics. Systemic failure. Why is homelessness exploding in one of Canada's richest cities? The answer isn't simple, but it's brutally clear. Vancouver's housing market has become a fortress that only the wealthy can enter. In 2025, the average rent for a one-bedroom apartment has crossed $10,500 per month. Meanwhile, minimum wage sits just above $17 an hour. Even someone working full-time without missing a single shift can't afford basic shelter. That's not just a gap, it's a chasm, and it's swallowing thousands. But rent is just the beginning. Inflation has driven up the cost of food, transportation, and utilities. Groceries that once fed a family for a week now barely last 3 days. Gas prices fluctuate wildly, and public transit, while cheaper, is overcrowded and underfunded. For many, even keeping a phone charged or buying a bus ticket becomes a daily calculation of survival. Then there's employment. Job security has eroded. Gig work dominates the landscape. Unstable hours, no benefits, and no safety net. People are working harder than ever, yet falling further behind. And when mental health begins to crack under the pressure, there's nowhere to turn. Public mental health services are overwhelmed, underfunded, and often inaccessible. Waiting lists stretch for months. Crisis lines are understaffed. Therapy is a luxury most can't afford. Shelters, once a last resort, are now overflowing. People line up for hours hoping for a bed, only to be turned away. Transitional housing programs, designed to help people move from the streets to stability, are chronically underfunded and riddled with bureaucracy. And affordable housing? It's a promise that politicians repeat every election cycle, but for those on the ground, it feels like a myth. This isn't just poverty, it's a system-wide failure. A city that prides itself on progress and prosperity has allowed its most vulnerable to fall through the cracks. And those cracks are now wide enough to swallow entire communities. When full-time workers are homeless, when families live in tents, and when mental illness goes untreated because help is out of reach, this isn't a glitch, it's a collapse. If you've witnessed this crisis, lived through it, or have thoughts on how we got here, share your voice in the comments below. Your perspective matters, and it might be the one that helps others understand the truth behind the skyline. Mental health substance use, a silent epidemic. Many of the people living on Vancouver streets aren't just homeless. They're hurting in ways most can't see. Beneath the layers of clothing and tarps are invisible wounds, trauma, anxiety, depression, PTSD. These aren't abstract conditions, they're daily battles. Some are survivors of abuse. Others have lost family, jobs, or their sense of identity. And in a city where mental health care is a luxury, not a guarantee, many are left to cope alone. Without access to consistent therapy, medication, or crisis support, some turn to substances, not for escape, but for relief. They're not trying to get high. They're trying to feel normal, to silence the voices, to numb the pain, to sleep through the night without flashbacks or fear. And in this desperate search for comfort, fentanyl has become dangerously common. Fentanyl is a synthetic opioid, cheap, potent, and often mixed into street drugs without warning. A dose the size of a grain of sand can be fatal. Users don't always know they're taking it. They think they're using heroin or meth or even pressed pills. But what they're really consuming is a chemical that's killing people faster than any other drug in Canadian history. Overdose deaths have surged. Ambulances race to the same corners day after day. Naloxone kits are handed out like bandages, but they're not a cure. They're a last resort. But this isn't a story about addiction. It's a story about pain, untreated, ignored, and buried beneath stigma. Society often sees substance users as reckless or weak, but what we're really seeing is untreated trauma. People who were failed by the system long before they ever picked up a needle. And every overdose isn't just a statistic. It's a life that could have been saved. A person who needed help and got silence instead. If you've witnessed this crisis, lost someone to it, or have thoughts on how we can do better, share your voice in the comments below. These stories deserve to be heard, and your perspective might be the one that helps someone else understand the human cost behind the headlines. Women on the streets, facing double risk. For women experiencing homelessness, the streets are more than just cold and unforgiving. They're dangerous in ways most people never imagine. While every person without shelter faces hardship, women carry an added burden, the constant threat of harassment, exploitation, and violence. Sleeping outside isn't just uncomfortable, it's a nightly gamble with safety. Many women report being followed, propositioned, or assaulted simply for existing in public spaces. And when the sun goes down, the risk multiplies. Shelters, which should offer refuge, often fall short. Many lack gender-specific protections, leaving women vulnerable to abuse even inside the very places meant to protect them. Some shelters mix populations without proper supervision, creating environments where trauma is repeated instead of healed. As a result, many women choose isolation over vulnerability, sleeping alone in alleys, under bridges, or near busy roads. One outreach worker shared a haunting detail. She sleeps near traffic not because it's comfortable, but because the noise keeps predators away. That's not a survival strategy. It's a last resort. Health complications are also more severe for women on the streets. Without access to hygiene products, medical care, or safe restrooms, infections and chronic illnesses go untreated. Pregnant women face unimaginable risks. Menopause, menstruation, and reproductive health are rarely addressed in outreach programs. And mental health? It deteriorates rapidly under constant fear and exposure. Many women carry deep trauma, some from domestic violence, others from childhood abuse, and the streets only deepen those wounds. This isn't just a gender issue, it's a humanitarian crisis that's been ignored for too long. Thousands of women across Canada are living in conditions that strip away their dignity, safety, and hope. And Their stories are rarely told. They're not just statistics. They're mothers, daughters, survivors, each with a name, a past, and a right to be safe. If you've seen this reality, lived through it, or have thoughts on how we can protect vulnerable women, share your voice in the comments below. These stories deserve to be heard, and your perspective might be the one that sparks change. Government response: promises versus reality. Governments at every level have pledged billions to tackle homelessness, housing shortages, and mental health crises. Press conferences are filled with bold statements, budget announcements, and long-term strategies. But on the ground, in the alleys, under the bridges, and across the tent-lined sidewalks of Vancouver, change is painfully slow. For the people living without shelter, these promises feel distant, abstract, and often meaningless. Tent sweeps continue with regularity. City crews dismantle makeshift camps, discarding personal belongings and pushing people further into instability. Outreach programs, meant to connect vulnerable individuals with services, are chronically underfunded and understaffed. Caseworkers are overwhelmed. Waitlists for housing stretch into years. And mental health support? It's often limited to emergency interventions, not long-term care. The result is a cycle of displacement, trauma, and survival, repeating itself week after week. Officials often cite complexity. They talk about zoning laws, funding pipelines, and interagency coordination. But activists, frontline workers, and those living the crisis firsthand call it what it is: neglect, a failure to act with urgency, a failure to prioritize human lives over bureaucratic process. One city report put it bluntly: "We're managing the crisis, not solving it." That sentence alone speaks volumes. It's not a lack of awareness, it's a lack of will. Meanwhile, every delay costs lives. People die from exposure, untreated illness, and overdose while waiting for help that never arrives. Families are torn apart, communities fracture, and the public grows desensitized to suffering that's become routine. The longer the system stalls, the deeper the damage becomes, not just to those on the streets, but to the moral fabric of the society watching it happen. If you followed these policies, worked in outreach, or lived through the consequences, share your thoughts in the comments below. Your voice matters, and it might be the one that helps others see beyond the headlines and into the reality that still hasn't changed. The hustle, surviving without a system. Not everyone living on the streets is idle. In fact, many hustle harder than most people with jobs, just to survive another day. You'll find men collecting recyclables from dumpsters at dawn, women selling handmade crafts on sidewalks, and youth offering to clean car windows at intersections. These aren't hobbies. They're survival strategies in a city that offers no safety net. With no formal employment, no bank accounts, and no fixed addresses, these individuals operate in a shadow economy, unseen, unprotected, and unacknowledged. Some earn just enough to buy a meal, others save for a bus ticket to a shelter across town. But every coin, every gesture, every hour spent hustling is a testament to human resilience. And yet society often labels them as lazy, dangerous, or undeserving. The truth? They're doing what they can with what little they have. No pension, no paycheck, just grit. One man shared, "I sort bottles for 10 hours a day. I make $12, but it's mine. I earned it." That kind of dignity doesn't come from handouts. It comes from effort. And still, the system offers no reward, no path forward, just survival on repeat. If you've seen this kind of street hustle, or if you've ever had to fight for your own survival, share your thoughts in the comments. These stories deserve to be seen, heard, and understood, because behind every hustle is a human trying not to disappear. Community frontlines, the helpers. Amid the chaos, there's something quietly powerful happening on the streets of Vancouver. While systems fail and policies stall, ordinary people step forward. Volunteers, nonprofit workers, outreach teams, showing up day after day, not for recognition, but because they refuse to look away. These are the community frontlines. No headlines, no government funding, just compassion in motion. They distribute hot meals from folding tables in freezing rain, They offer medical care from backpacks stocked with bandages, antiseptics, and naloxone kits. They listen, really listen, when no one else will. For many living on the streets, these helpers are the only consistent presence in their lives. They remember names. They ask how someone's doing. They treat people not as problems to be solved, but as humans who deserve dignity. One volunteer shared a moment that stays with you. She told me she hadn't heard her name spoken in weeks. We don't fix everything, but we show people they matter. That kind of connection doesn't cost billions. It costs time, empathy, and the willingness to stand beside someone in their darkest hour. And sometimes that's enough to keep someone going, enough to remind them they're not invisible. These grassroots efforts don't replace systemic solutions, but they fill the void left by bureaucracy. They're the bridge between survival and hope. And while they may not have the resources to change everything, they change something every day. One meal, one conversation, one act of kindness at a time. If you've volunteered, received help, or witnessed these everyday heroes in action, share your story in the comments below. These voices deserve to be amplified, because in a world that often turns its back, they're the ones still reaching out. Canada's breaking point. What happens next? Vancouver's homelessness crisis is not an isolated tragedy, it's a warning. Across Canada, the same patterns are emerging in city after city. In Toronto, tent encampments now line public parks once filled with families. In Calgary, shelters are turning away record numbers of people each night. In Montreal, outreach workers report rising overdose deaths and mental health breakdowns among the unhoused. The symptoms may vary, but the diagnosis is the same. Canada is approaching a nationwide humanitarian emergency. This isn't just about housing, it's about survival. The cost of living has outpaced wages. Mental health services are collapsing under demand. Affordable housing projects are stuck in bureaucratic limbo. And while governments continue to pledge billions, the people on the ground see little change. The crisis is spreading faster than the solutions. And if this trend continues, the consequences won't just be visible, they'll be irreversible. But it's not too late. Change doesn't begin with policy. It begins with awareness. When people understand the scale and depth of the crisis, they begin to care. And when they care, they act. Action leads to pressure. Pressure leads to reform. And reform leads to lives saved. So what can you do? Start by sharing this video. Let others see what's happening beyond the headlines. Support your local shelters, food banks, and outreach programs. They're doing the work governments haven't. Demand better policies from your elected officials. Ask hard questions. Vote with compassion. And most importantly, listen to the stories of those who've been pushed to the margins. Because behind every tent is a person, and behind every person is a story worth saving. These aren't strangers. They're fellow Canadians, and their future depends on what we choose to do next. If this message moved you, share your thoughts in the comments below. Your voice could be the spark that helps someone else see the truth and take action. You've seen the stories. You've heard the voices. Now it's your turn. Comment your thoughts. Share this video to raise awareness. And if you can, support a shelter near you. Let's turn empathy into action. Because change doesn't start with governments. It starts with us. Thank you for watching this episode of GlobePath Travel Documentary. We've walked through the shadows of Vancouver, listened to voices often ignored, and uncovered truths that demand attention. If this story moved you, don't let it end here. Like the video. Subscribe to the channel for more untold stories. And most importantly, share your thoughts in the comments. Your voice matters. Your empathy creates impact. Together, we can turn awareness into action.